Hello and welcome back to Growth Chats. Today we've got Ed Elliot from Public with us. Public is a really exciting organisation that's helping transform the public sector. So without further ado, let's meet Ed and find out more about what they do. Hi Ed, welcome to Growth Chats. Great to have you on here.
Hi Jay, great to be here.
Great. Yeah, thank you very much for being on this. I know, so I've known Ed for a while now. I was actually part of the first cohort, was it?
The first GovStep cohort.
Yeah. First GovStep cohort. So yeah, it's great to have you on the show to share your experience and talk about Public on here as well. So I think before we jump into Public and what Public's doing, it'd be great to sort of have an introduction into you and your role in Public.
Yeah, sure. So I joined Public about 3 years ago, which doesn't seem like a long time, but that was at the time Public had only been going for about 3 months. So I was the third employee to join. And since then, I've worked across our accelerator programs. So GovStart being the main one, I led that for a couple of years. I've also done marketing and comms for Public for about 3 years, working across a lot of our event functions. And now I head up our growth team, which works across a few different areas, from working with startups to find great solutions in the public sector that might fit their particular technology, to also working with government themselves to help them refine what challenges they have, where in the market should they be looking, and hopefully start to find solutions that will sort of get them towards some kind of resolution of whatever challenge they're facing. So that's kind of where I fit within the public machine at the moment. Fantastic. But with all of these things, it changes.
Yeah, I know you mentioned that you were a team of 3 there, but I think before the call you mentioned that you're now a team of, is it 30 or 35?
We're up to just short of 35 now in 3 different countries. So yes, we're growing.
That's pretty rapid growth there. So tell us about Public. So what is Public? And you mentioned GovStart as well. So how do those two fit together?
Yeah, sure. So in one line, Public helps tech startups work with the public sector. And the classic problems we're trying to solve is that, if you are a small company, working with government is very hard. It's very hard to know who to talk to, let alone how to get in front of them. Once you have got in front of them, what are the challenges? What are the policy issues they're worrying about? A lot of that stuff is not clear. It's not on the internet. And then going from there, if you do find someone who wants to buy your product or your service, it can still take 3, 6, 12 months to get money coming through the door, which, you'll know for most companies is just way too long and a nightmare to really work with. So for a long time, startups have just stayed away from government. And if you asked your average investor 3 or 4 years ago, would they take any companies who are working with government? They would say absolutely no way,
Yeah.
But luckily things are starting to change, and we've been pushing very hard with government to start to reform a lot of their procurement processes, to think about startups as a really key supplier within their supplier base, particularly for technology. And particularly when you look at verticals like health and local government, you're starting to see a lot more innovation come in from small agile companies using technology, everything from AI to SaaS business models to IoT, to really solve some really key issues in society. I mean, everything from, in the current crisis we're in, how do you care for the elderly when they're stuck at home? How do schools provide for children, if they haven't got classrooms? A lot of this stuff is really reliant on technology, and quite frankly, really reliant on startup technology that can deploy really, really quickly. So we've been working on that. How do we tangibly do those things? So, as you say, GovStart is a main vehicle of ours, which is an accelerator program where we take, anywhere between sort of 10 to 20 companies a year across different verticals across the public sector, give them very, very bespoke support. So we work with them to work out, what are your particular targets for the next year? Let's help you work towards those targets by finding you mentors.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with these organizations that you're working with, are you finding that the government is more open to working with startups and innovative companies now than before? Or are they still kind of looking for bigger organizations in the bulk and then sort of filling the gaps with smaller organizations?
I mean, it's definitely a mixed picture, but I mean, compared to 5 years ago, the opportunity is much, much larger. I mean, we often use the word GovTech, just stick anything before the word tech and it becomes a thing. But, GovTech, it wasn't a word 5 years ago. There was just no real consensus from government as to why they should be working with startups. Whereas now, there are regular policy announcements. There's a GovTech fund run by GDS in the Cabinet Office. Pretty much every minister is trying to think about GovTech within their own internal policies, which is a huge step forward. There is still a way to go. I think at the top levels of government, it's very well understood. The further you get down into the machine, there's still more education that can be done to help them understand what startups can do. But yeah, I think the opportunity is definitely opening up. But there are definitely, you have to kind of understand where within the public procurement machine you as a small company can fit in. Government is not going to give you a £600 million contract to do cybersecurity across the whole of the NHS network until you have a certain balance sheet, because they have certain risk profiles they like to work with. But even pretty big service provisions are starting to be taken up by startups. Example, one of the companies you were in a cohort with, Adzuna, now runs the job board for the whole of government, and they are Series B, Series C company with about sort of 80, 90 employees. So possibly a little bigger than some companies that might be listening, but definitely within the realms of possibility, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I've also seen that change as well. While working in the cohort with you, with the company I was with, so I had sales cycles to government which were sort of 2 to 3 weeks, and then I had some which were 12 months plus. So I guess it really does depend on which part of government you're selling to as well, and what you are selling to them as well.
Definitely. It's a very checkered process at the moment, in terms of there are huge kind of entrepreneurs, people who really want to push innovation in government. And if you find one, they will be your champion, and they will take you through that procurement and make everything fast. But if you find yourself in a backwater, and it's sad to say, it does often tend to be local government, where there is a much higher level of suspicion for technology and maybe not the expertise, it can be a lot slower. So part of the challenge here is finding the people who will want to work with you, and making sure that they understand what you do and become your champions.
And I guess that's one of the main benefits of public, which is that people in your cohort have that experience from people who are currently working in government or have worked in government, and you're kind of guiding them through the process and how to do it, because it's completely different to selling in the private sector.
Yeah, and we've always been, blessed and very thankful to the mentors who come on our program, because, as you say, a lot of them are, ex-commercial directors at the MOD or Department of Education, or wherever it happens to be, or actually, as we're starting to find more kind of ex-startup founders who have created a business in the public sector and actually have a slightly different and often very relevant perspective of, as a company that is scrapping from, raise to raise, how do you scale is a really unique skill set when it comes to the public sector. And what we're starting to find is more and more founders who have that expertise and want to, give back in a way to the people they see as the next generation. So we're really lucky to have those individuals, and they form a huge part of our team, particularly when it comes to GovStart.
Yeah, absolutely. And how does sort of the model work with GovStart and the startups in that program? Is it kind of a pay to be part of the accelerator program, or how does that sort of work?
Yeah, so we work on either an equity or a warrants basis, and it's a pretty it's a model that we created very early, and we found over time has been pretty popular. It's fairly unique amongst programs, which is we do a kind of 50-50 split with companies where, because we take companies of different shapes and sizes, they all have sort of different particular targets they want to hit, or different places in the public sector they want to go. So what we do is we sit down very early with them, or even during the application process, and say, what is it, the targets you want to reach? And we want to make sure that there's stuff we can actually help with. And then if they get accepted onto the program, we sort of work out between us, okay, here are the 5 KPIs you want to hit during this program. If you finish the program, the first 50% of whatever we agree warrants wise, you will sort of grant us as you've gone through all of the work. We've provided resources, but the second 50% you only have to grant us if we hit those KPIs. So it's very
50% of the equity.
Sorry, yeah, I should say. So if there was a nominal amount, to give the rough boundaries, if it was a kind of Series A or Series B company, it would be, 1.5 to 2% in warrants rather than equity.
Got it. Okay.
But if it was a smaller company, it might be upwards from there. And then, so 50% of that 1.5 to 2%, you would grant us at the end of the program, which would be kind of almost like an advisor fee. And then if we hit certain KPIs, say you wanted to secure a certain number of contracts, support raising your next fundraise, and develop the next feature on your product for the public sector, if we had hit all of those things or helped you hit all of those things during the next 6 to 12 months, that would be the point where that second 50% gets kind of comes into play. And so but the basic idea is, we see a lot of accelerators out there that give very like cookie cutter, always the same things, every company, not personalized, not working to any targets. We don't want to be that. We want to be, tell us what your particular KPIs are. Let's tie our incentives to your incentives. And then let's make sure that all the good things that happen for everyone, and we share in that benefit.
So it's more of a bespoke model. So you don't just reach out to companies and say this is what we're doing, take it or leave it. It's more of a discussion depending on the company's stage, and working out sort of a bespoke plan which fits both parties.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this is particular for the world in which we live in, which is the government market, more than many markets, is about trust and personal connections. And you can argue whether that should or shouldn't be the case, but we are, whether we like it or not, we're advocates for the companies that come through our programs. We are putting them in front of government and saying, these are the companies you should be working with. These are the best in class. And we have always felt that argument is made much, much stronger if we are quite literal, in very small amounts, owners of that company or participants in that company. And we've always found with government that they trust us a lot more if it's not we're being paid a check to advertise this company. So it has that kind of element to it, but also incentivize us beyond the program, 2-3 years down the line. If a company comes back and says, actually, our next thing is we really want to get into Germany. Can you help us? And we've got a German office. It incentivizes us to kind of keep supporting that company over their journey through the public sector. So we found, and we're increasingly finding as the years go by with GovStart, that creates a really nice community of companies which want to be in and around us and want to stay part of the family. And we love and enjoy that because, there is always more elements of government that needs enlightening and needs to be introduced to a company. And, to have a portfolio around us who want to do that is great.
And from what I remember, the companies also work together well with each other. So it's not just, via public and its advisors, they're all kind of grouped together. And when one's done well in one area, they'll kind of go over and that person will kind of give a presentation or talk about how they've achieved that. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, a lot of the experience of working in the public sector are unique to particular verticals, but a lot of it is very similar. Everyone has to go through procurement. Everyone has to find particular security standards to get their product to a level where, someone will feel like it's secure enough to work with government. And, sharing those expertise, I mean, we can sit down and have a workshop with them to tell them how to do it. But a lot of the time, it's much nicer to do it over a pint in a pub and, with someone who's in exactly the same place as you. And we do genuinely, we learn quite quickly that running programs is a lot nicer when you have people on the other side who are nice people and want to work as part of a team and a cohort. And we do make efforts when we're selecting to also pick founders we just think are people we want to work with and we think other people in the cohort will want to work with. So we've always found from that there's a good community, and I don't know, that's one of the reasons that I keep working with companies.
No, that's fantastic. A sense of community is always so important. And I remember from my time in GovStart that, going out for drinks, all that kind of stuff. And I'm still in touch with a lot of people in the cohort. So it's definitely a great sense of community that you guys have built up there. And that kind of moving on to kind of your success stories. So you've had a lot of companies go through I shouldn't say through, because as you mentioned, they always kind of stay part of your cohort. What are kind of some of the success stories that have come out of public?
Yeah, there's been a few. I mean, particularly looking at GovStart, So as I said, there was a company earlier called Adzuna in our first cohort that won a major contract with the Department of Working Pensions to run the government's job board, Universal Job Match. That was a contract of around 8 million in total contract value. And we supported them, through that procurement process, understanding, the particular bureaucracy that they had to go through to kind of make sure they were in the best place. So that was a big win for us. Since then, we've had a number of really great companies working across health, in particular. A great company called Patchwork that was in our second cohort that now works with 16 different trusts and hospitals across the UK. They match doctors with locum shifts. It's a weird and complicated world, but effectively, at the moment, if you're a hospital and you've got a spare shift you need to fill, you call up an agency, that agency calls up 5 people. It takes a hell of a lot of time. In the world what we all live in, it's so much more simple to have an app where doctors can see those shifts and book in for themselves. And that's exactly what Patchwork do. Yeah. So they are growing really, really fast and doing a lot of really interesting stuff with the NHS, which is fantastic. We also now have some really good case studies overseas. So, in Germany, our first cohort which started last year is doing incredibly well, better than we ever could have expected. We had a company called Conveys who was literally, when we first met them, 2 students out of Munich University with great products that was a kind of chatbot tool, but also did internal automation and communications. They have now been deployed in 5 different regions. When we first met them, they had no experience of working with government or indeed the private sector. They've been taken up as a real kind of champion of how to work during COVID, and are now working with 5 different local authorities, providing COVID chatbots, providing best advice for public health, also helping people internally to manage resources. So they are quickly becoming kind of rock stars of the GovStart scene in Germany. So that's been a huge success story from our cohort as well.
Fantastic. And so also I hear that, we spoke about your socials a bit earlier on, and, being a part of your social, had some fantastic nights out with you and the team. So here you have some beer connections in the company as well. Do you guys get sponsored on your beers?
We do, in fact. So one of the funny sort of backgrounds of one of our founders, Alex, is he's part of the Heineken family, and I hope he's happy with me saying this. But yeah, so he obviously is well connected to that particular beer scene, and there's never been a lack of fluid when it comes to Friday evening drinks. But
absolutely, and I remember he used to. Well, he might still have it, but his work bag used to be a Heineken bag.
Oh yeah, he's definitely still got that. Still got a lot of other merch as well. Yeah.
Fantastic. And so before we kind of finish things off, let's talk a little bit about your podcast as well. So you have a podcast which you actually just came off before we jumped onto this. So what is your podcast about, and what kind of stuff do you discuss on there?
Yeah, so the podcast is called COVIDcast. It's particularly looking at the challenges that have been created by coronavirus, and who and what kinds of new technology services, particularly technology services provided by startups, are emerging to fill these challenges and these gaps that are being created. It's normally 2 or 3 interviews a podcast, looking at different areas. So, we've just finished one which will kind of be launched quite soon on loneliness and isolation, and particularly the elderly who are increasingly isolated during COVID. We've also done work on how do you manage staff internally in hospitals during COVID when a lot of resources has to be moved around. And then we had a really great chat with Ian O'Neill, who was Director of Transformation and Technology at NHSX, talking about, the macro point of view of, what are large health services worrying about? How do they find solutions and scale them really, really quickly, which was fascinating. So it ranges around a fair bit, but it's all in this area of technology, COVID, and what are the things that we're learning throughout this crisis and being implemented, and how can we take them into a new normal?
New normal. Fantastic. I'll put a link to that in the description of this video. So anyone who wants to check out Ed and Public's podcast can click on that link to find out more. So Ed, yeah, finally, I just want to find out how companies, so I think, companies who maybe weren't thinking about approaching government or working with government might be looking at that space now. So how would people go about looking at the public program and the GovStep program and sort of applying, and what's that application process look like?
Yeah, so firstly to say we have a pretty open door policy at Public, so you can find all of our contact details online or on our website pretty easily. So drop us an email and it's very easy for us to arrange a chat. In terms of, particularly with GovStart and the other programs that we run, we do kind of quite wide application processes, and you'll see it all over social media, hopefully, if our marketing is going well.
That falls on you, right? The marketing, so it should be.
a little bit, but yes, you can definitely tell me if I'm not doing a good job. But but we should be opening applications for our latest program probably over the next few months. So hopefully that there'll be a very real thing to look at very soon, and there'll be a whole load of material with that as to what the new program will provide. We're expecting it to be a slightly different type of program this year, just because of the world in which we're now living in. But it will be exciting for us to try something a little bit different. And we may not be able to meet you in person, but we'd love to have a video call with anyone. Even if you're thinking of the public sector very, as a second thought or an afterthought after the private sector, you'd be surprised how much government, has use cases for almost everything these days. And it'd be great to kind of talk to you and see, what we'd recommend you look at in terms of the public sector.
Fantastic. And your website is public.io, isn't it? Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
That is an amazing domain, by the way. I don't know how you guys got it, but that is an amazing domain to have.
Yeah, it was good. Although we've had this sort of problem for years and years and years that everyone thinks we're called public.io rather than public. So we've had to sort of slowly try and move our branding to be very aggressive in terms of we're not called public.io, we're just public. But it is good. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Ed, thanks so much for being on the show. I think our viewers are going to learn a lot from you, and hopefully we'll get some of them applying to your program when the new applications open.
Sounds good, Jay. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Ed.